that much about who we are or what we do. We'll mostly talk about what we do, and if you wanted to get involved, how you would do that, if it sounded like the right thing for you. But in talking about that, we'll also cover what we don't do, because I think that's quite important. And it's not, the purpose of that is not to say people who are spending their time doing that sort of vegan advocacy or activism are wrong or shouldn't be doing that. But it's just to explain why we don't, because we do get asked that quite a lot. Why are you not involved in petitions and that sort of thing? So the first thing is really, why do we spend our time on this? If our concern is for non-human animals, then why do we spend our time talking to people about veganism? And the main reason is because we believe that the single best thing any individual person can do if they think other animals matter is be vegan. So when we have a conversation with someone about our relationship with other animals, about how we're using them and killing them in their billions and what that means for other living beings, and they get that, they understand, and they say, right, I realise I've been kind of concerned about this for a while, and now this makes sense, and they decide, okay, I'm not going to participate in that anymore. I'm not going to spend my money directly supporting violence anymore, basically paying someone to use and kill animals for me. Then everything falls into line for that person, for that individual. They are never going to support, ever again, hunting, experimenting on animals, eating animals or anything we take from them, using them for entertainment. They're never going to buy an animal again. So all of those, what we would call single issue things to do with the way we use animals, all of that's taken care of for that one person, because they're never going to do any of that again. And then they will also, because they are vegan and they understand the moral basis for veganism, they'll also go off and influence other people around them, their family and their friends and their colleagues and so on. So another reason is because once you go vegan, you realise a number of things. And the first thing that's really common for all vegans who we've ever met is their only regret is that they didn't do it sooner. It turned out to be much more straightforward than they ever thought it would be. In fact, there's a lot of benefits that we get from living vegan in terms of our health, but also in terms of coming into contact with new things, not only in terms of your diet, but other things as well. And it's actually really life-affirming rather than a negative thing. But mainly, you realise that, looking back, you really always believed what you believe now, that we shouldn't be using and killing other animals. And so you should have always been living in recognition of that. You always thought animals mattered. You always called yourself an animal lover. Well, if that's how you thought of yourself, if that's how you thought of other animals, you should have been living vegan. So most vegans wish they'd done it sooner. And you also realise that, actually being vegan is the least we can do for them. They're being forced into existence in their billions year on year for the purpose of using them, taking from them what we want, making their bodies machines so that we can have what we want from them, whether it's their flesh, their milk, their eggs, their skin, their children, and killing them. And all of it's unnecessary. And when you start to see that all animal use is connected and that it's all fundamentally morally wrong, you realise living vegan is actually, that's the minimum I can do. And for those of us who are able to do it, we should be out there and we should be trying to help other people to see what we eventually saw and wish we had realised sooner. You also realise, a lot of us have talked about this, that if only someone had had that conversation with you sooner, if only you had met another vegan earlier, maybe when you were a child and you'd started to realise that what you were being fed was the body of an animal, if you'd met a vegan and they had spoken to you and said, if you think animals matter, then don't you think their life matters more than your taste buds? Did you know that you can live without consuming animals? Did you know that you can live without paying other people to kill animals for you? If someone had sat me down and had that conversation with me when I was vegetarian, or when I was just a meat eater, an animal eater, I like to think that I would have gone vegan sooner. And I think I probably would, given that I eventually got there myself without having met any other vegans and without anyone having challenged me about my behaviour. Then I think if they had, I would have gone vegan sooner. And that's, again, a really common experience among vegans. You also realise that anyone can be vegan. What I mean by that is that veganism's not some sort of middle class or upper income lifestyle to aspire to. It's not about a lifestyle at all. It's not about food at all. It's about morality. It's about recognising that other animals are alive in the same way we are, and so we shouldn't be doing this to them. And everyone is entitled to consider morality. Everyone's entitled to access to information. So, we would be foolish to say that it's as easy for this person as the next person to live vegan. Some people obviously are in more difficult circumstances generally. Some people don't have anywhere to prepare food. Some people don't have a house. Some people have to use food banks on a daily basis. Some people depend on people giving them donations in the street. And for us to say to them, if you consume another animal product, that's morally wrong, you should really be vegan, that would be wrong. But that doesn't mean we shouldn't talk to them about the moral issue. So we have homeless people who come up to our stalls in the street, and we have the same discussion with them about the moral issue, if that's the conversation they want to have. But then we wouldn't say to them, now you must go away and never consume another animal product. We have to recognise the position they're in. But for most of us, we have control over our choices, and it's actually incredibly easy. Most of us purchase our food in a supermarket where we have options. Some of us have more options than others. But for us to say that it would be genuinely difficult for us to live vegan, for most of us in this country, that's just not the case. Another group of people where it is more challenging is children, because they are in a circumstance where they are dependent on their parents and how open their parents are to supporting them and purchasing things that are suitable for them. So again, with children, we have the same conversation. It's really easy to explain veganism to a child, often more easy than it is with an adult, because they often feel more of a connection with animals than adults do. And if you explain to them, vegans look at a dog or a cat and we'd never do anything to hurt them, and we try to give them what they need. If somebody was to try to hurt them, we would try and stop them, and they agree with all of that. And we just explain, well, with these animals on our leaflet, the cow, the pig, the sheep, the chicken, it's just the same. They are also alive. They also have eyes and a brain, and they think and they feel. They have relationships. They want to have fun. They want to be warm and cozy. They want to be fed. They don't want to be killed. So vegans don't pay people to kill them for us. And we explain that to children all the time, and they understand that. But we would then not go on and say, so you must never do that again, because, that's really bad. Because they are dependent on their parents. Sometimes their parents are there with them, and they openly tell us that although they're not vegan themselves, they want to support their child because they're starting to realise what they're being given to eat or wear, and they don't want it. And some parents are more shut off to it, and they're not prepared to support them in that. So you've got to meet them where they are in terms of their circumstances. But maybe when they leave home, having had that discussion and having realised, okay, there is a way of living where I don't have to pay money towards violence against animals, maybe when they leave home, then they'll go vegan and they'll live vegan then. Another thing is that only vegans will talk about the rights of other animals. So what that stems from is the fact that if you're not vegan, then in one form or another you're contributing to using and killing other animals, whether that's for food or for other purposes. So you really can't talk about other animals having rights because you're involved in breaching those rights. Only vegans can actually say, animals are alive in the same way we are, and therefore they should have the same basic rights as us. They should be left alone. They shouldn't be forced into existence. They shouldn't be killed. So again, because we're the only ones who can do it, we should be having that discussion. Because if you're not vegan, you can talk about a lot of other things. And this is what all the large animal charities do. They'll talk about specific species of animal. They might talk about foxes or badgers or, other cute, cuddly, furry animals. They might talk about specific nasty things that we do to animals. They might talk about foie gras. They might talk again about fur. Specific single issue use of animals, and they might talk about a plant-based diet, but they're not going to talk about veganism or animal rights because they can't, because only vegans can really talk about that. And as I said previously, that is the only thing that will get us to solving the problem we have with our relationship with non-human animals, the fact that we're using and killing them. And finally, you realise that vegan advocacy is very worthwhile. So not only on an individual level where you have those discussions and you see that for that person things are falling into place, but on a bigger scale, somebody we've learned a lot from is Gary Francione, who's a law professor at Rutgers University in America. He and his partner Anna Charlton. And he's one of the people who've looked at the figures and pointed out that for the UK, and he was using a figure in early 2016, when they thought that there were about 150,000 vegans in the UK. And he said, well, if every person who's vegan, who actually thinks that morally we have an obligation not to use and kill animals, was to convince one more person a year that they should be vegan, then we would have a vegan UK by 2025. This is 2018. But a few months after that, the Vegan Society did their study, which suggested there's more like 450,000 vegans in the UK. So if you rerun that calculation, using that starting figure, we could have a vegan UK by 2023, which is 5 years from now. So when you think about what we're doing to animals, what they're going through in their billions, and then you look at what we might have, you can't just turn away from that, you can't just ignore that. But you do have to recognise that not every vegan is out there talking about the moral imperative to live vegan and convincing one other person a year to be vegan. Some people can't, for whatever reason, health reasons or anxiety or whatever it is. Some people are put off because, vegans can be vicious to one another and non-vegans can be hard on vegans trying to speak to them. And some people just don't want to. So we decided that rather than just turn our back on that possibility, that we just needed to be, those of us who can and who are willing should just do a bit more, and should go out there and expand on the people we'll influence in our day-to-day lives anyway. So friends, family, colleagues, people we meet, hairdressers, people in the supermarket, taxi drivers. We talk to everyone we can about veganism, but we decided that we should also be out on the street. So that's when we decided to set up this group of volunteers.
Hi, my name's Deborah. Thank you all for coming. So I am a volunteer with Go Vegan Scotland. So we're a grassroots organisation. Everyone gives their time and effort free, no expenses, no jobs, no salaries, just us, like Barbara says, on the streets, at festivals, etc., doing what we can to help people understand why they should be vegan and how we can support them to be vegan. So most of us met, I think, online really through Facebook, and we just started chatting about the idea that we felt we ought to do more. And we did a few things to start off with. We handed out leaflets on the streets in Glasgow, and we quickly realised that that wasn't working. So we had this idea to do a stall. I think we actually saw it was in America. I think it was something that...
I think we saw the Irish one.
Yeah, and they were doing this
Dublin.
cupcake for a conversation idea. So we put our money together, we bought a gazebo, I bought my camping table, we made some cupcakes, and on a very, very cold February day, I think this one here at the bottom is actually our very first stall in Glasgow, and we just rocked up on the street. We didn't have any permission, we hadn't asked anybody, we just put everything out and just waited to see what happened. And I think the very first thing that happened was 2 police officers approached us, and we were all, we're going to be moved away, and actually they came to talk to us about veganism. And they had a chat and they had a cupcake, and from that point onwards we kind of relaxed, and I think we actually talked to them about, are we allowed to do it, and they were like, yes, you can do it anywhere as long as you're not selling something, as long as you're not blocking the entrance to somewhere. So since then we've kind of grown from strength to strength, and we currently focus on vegan information stalls in Glasgow and Edinburgh. So those are the 3 previous ones were all Glasgow. This is Edinburgh. It's the Mound, near the Mound in Edinburgh. Yeah. And in Glasgow we have 2 or 3 places, Sauchiehall Street and Argyle Street mainly. And we're currently doing 2 a month in Edinburgh, 2 a month in Glasgow. And we don't approach people. We don't hand out leaflets. We haven't got megaphones. We don't shout at anybody. It clearly says vegan information on all 4 sides of the stall. So when people come to us, they've seen this and they know that it's something to do with veganism. We've been given the money by somebody who supported the work that we do to buy a camper van. This is Ellie at the bottom. You might have seen her around. And last year we started going to different places in Scotland. So we've been to all of these places and more. And this year we've done about 3 pop-ups around Scotland, and we've got more planned. So we're out and about a lot. And here we are this weekend in Fort William. We've also done festivals. We've been to Butte Fest, the Meadows Festival, Love Fest, various festivals. And if we can afford to go, we will, if we've got enough volunteers. So this is, we just do the same thing, put up a stall, let people come to us and chat to us. You can see in some of the pictures we've got quite a lot of food on the stalls, but we've moved away from doing that because we found that people were just coming to eat. And really what we want to do is talk about veganism. So we do have a few samples, most particularly cheese, because that's the most common thing that comes up, what will I eat instead of cheese. So we try and make it as accessible as possible, not just in terms of us being, there, not having too many people, volunteers, because that can be a bit off-putting if there's lots of people crowding around. Making sure that we're in places that it's accessible, physically accessible for everybody to come to, no matter what their ability. And as I said, people approach us. So they know that we're there, they know that it's something to do with veganism, and they come over to us. And, we talk about our relationship with other animals. That's our focus. And hopefully through that conversation, we help them to see that their behaviour doesn't match with their values. It's very rare to find somebody who doesn't care about animals. It does occasionally happen that you get somebody who just doesn't seem to care and maybe has come to talk to us to give us a hard time, to ask us about, the common things that people talk to vegans about and non-vegans talk to vegans about. But even they will leave the store realising that we are just really ordinary, reasonable people, and that we had a conversation with them and that we were friendly and open and nice to them. So they go away with perhaps a different view of what vegans and veganism is all about, even if their intention was to come and have a niggle, you know. So our aim is not to create a vegan, as Barbara said earlier on. You know, we're not there to tell people how they should live their life or what they should go away and do next. That's up to them. They have to make that decision, that choice. What we do is talk to them about the moral imperative to be vegan and why that is. And we can give them resources and support, you know, if they want to go away and do that. But we don't tell them how to live their life. Just talk about the aim, the final aim, where they should be, you know, what they should be working towards. So we focus on animal rights. A lot of people think that vegan is a diet. A lot of people who come to the store think that veganism is a diet. So, you know, we try to talk initially about how it's not a diet or a lifestyle, and it's about the recognition of the rights of others, of non-human animals. It's very straightforward. Gary Francione, who Barbara mentioned, he uses the word abolition, and I know that can sometimes be problematic for some people, and we like to use the word justice. It's a justice approach. It's about justice for non-human animals. We have really, really great conversations with people, and the feedback that we've had from people who've met us, either on the streets or at festivals, has been really positive. We've had lots of people say that we helped them to reevaluate their position and their thoughts and feelings about animals, and clarified for them why they should be vegan, and helped them to talk to other people more confidently about why veganism is so important. So we use some of these resources. We usually have this book, Vegan Freak, on our stall, so people can have a flick through and look through it. And these are the people that we recommend for research. You know, we'll often say the conversation that they have with us is just the start, and then they can go away and they'll research it. But sometimes some of the things that we're saying might be quite new to people or quite challenging. Most people will go away and they'll think about that, and then they'll research it, you know, Google it, look it up, and then they'll go, oh, yeah, never knew that, or that's a different take on that, or I'd never thought about it like that. So these are some of the things that we found helpful and that we recommend. And the book, The Case for Animal Rights, that's quite an old book. It's been around for years. Gary Francione and Anna Charlton, they're the ones that Barbara was mentioning, from Rutgers University in America. And they've got a website, howdoigovegan.com, which is very useful. And the book, Eat Like You Care, that will really give you the explanation and the responses to any question that you can think about why, you know, why do animals matter. Vegan Freak is the book here. Like I said, we have that on our stall. Elephant in the Room is a blog online. Go Vegan World, that's the Irish organisation that Barbara mentioned earlier, that we kind of saw what they were doing in Ireland and followed on from that. So I recommend that you know, maybe look up some of these things and have a read, and it'll give you, you know, it'll give you links to other things for you to read as well. So as I said, these all apply a justice approach. So animal rights is a matter of justice, morality. They should not be exploited or killed. It really gets to the root of the issue, and it's the only approach that tackles speciesism, and it gives real clarity to what we're doing as vegan advocates. And again, like Barbara started out saying, you know, being vegan, that just, everything else falls into place. You know, all animal use and abuse falls into place when you go vegan, and that's why we focus on that. It's the one single thing that you can do that will make the biggest difference. So we promote veganism by being very clear about vegan advocacy, being rational, logical, reasoned most of the time. You know, it is, you know, important to us, and sometimes we can get a bit emotional, but on the stalls we try to be very calm, speaking about the issues, not accusing condemning. We don't want people to feel that we're being judgmental. You know, we just talk very calmly about the reasons why we feel that people should be vegan. And we're encouraging, positive, friendly. Speak to anybody who's been to one of our stores, they'll say they felt welcomed. And we'll talk to somebody for as long as they want to talk to us. We're not looking at our watches and asking them to move on. So we definitely avoid, Barbara talked at the beginning about what we don't do. So we definitely avoid talking about these things, baby steps, journeys, vegetarianism, reductionary, I never say that, reducitarianism, meatless Mondays. So I haven't got I left my glasses in the van. So that's just a wee advert. Go vegan. Animals have a right not to be used at all, and it's a moral baseline for taking that right seriously. Vegetarianism, mixed messages. So Paul McCartney, very high profile, famous person, been vegetarian for more than 40 years, 50 years. I think, probably if Linda was still alive, he would be vegan. She would definitely be vegan. And they would have a vegan company. But it's just confusing for people. A lot of their things are vegan, they say vegan on, and then they've just got one or two things that, aren't vegan. Why don't they just go vegan? He's got a platform, to the whole world. It could make a huge difference if he was doing vegan advocacy. We're just a tiny cog in a huge wheel, but he could do an awful lot of good. And I'm sure you've all seen this, if slaughterhouses had glass walls, everyone would be vegetarian. We slight different take on that. If dairy farms had glass walls, every vegetarian would be a vegan. Back to Barbara.
So just to continue with some of the things we don't do, another big one is welfareism. So a lot of people, I think, before they go vegan, they spend an awful lot of time thinking, well, I'm struggling with this, there's an issue here, I'm not that comfortable buying these bits of bodies, and I kind of know there's a problem, but I don't really want to think about it. But I think what I'll do is I'll buy these happy products, because they have labels that tell me that although I know this animal's dead and someone killed them for me, there's a label on it that says it was happy and it was all nice and everything was fine. So I did that for a while, and it made me feel a bit better. But there was, I knew there was still an issue, and eventually I sorted that out for myself. But a lot of people don't, and these labels make so many people feel comfortable about what they're doing, and that's what these labels are intended to do. The business industry are crying out for higher welfare regulations because they know that that's what will stop the flow of veganism, because that's one of the biggest blockers to people going vegan, is these happy death labels. They're a myth that when you look behind them and you see what free range actually means, it's not what the adverts portray it as at all. Now I know that, but more importantly, now I know that none of it really matters. So for example, if you take the egg, now I know that even if a hen lives her entire life in a backyard and she's scratching about in the dirt, she's got loads of space, she's got companions, she's comfortable at night and she's safe, she's given lots of food, none of that matters, because she's still trapped inside her own body, which we created over hundreds and hundreds of years. So to take hens as an example, when they were roosting in the trees in Asia, they used to produce a cluster or two clusters of eggs